Welcome to Right Fit Leader, a podcast from Alec Broadfoot and the Hire with Confidence team at VisionSpark. This is where visionaries, entrepreneurs, and leaders learn how to hire leaders, lead better, and build teams that last. Through expert insights, real client stories, and conversations with top leaders, you will hear how we find A players for your business. This is Right Fit Leader.
Welcome, everyone. I have Shannon Waller here with us today, and Shannon Waller is a seasoned expert on entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial teams. Having been with Strategic Coach since 1991, she created the Entrepreneurial Team Program and is a sought-after coach, speaker, and podcaster and author whose work emphasizes unique ability, teamwork, and actionable strategies for team success. Shannon has written and co-authored several books, including the Team Success Handbook, Multiplication by Subtraction, which we're going to talk about today, Superpowered, and the best-selling Unique Ability 2.0 Discovery. She is also the creator and host of Team Success Podcast and co-host of Inside Strategic Coach with Dan Sullivan. So welcome, Shannon.
Thank you, Alec. I am so happy to be with you.
Yeah. And Shannon is a friend and colleague, and we've known each other probably 7-8 years now since my time as Strategic Coach. And we've done some speaking together and some webinars together. We did some Who Not House with Dan and Emily. We even stayed on a friend's boat for a weekend, right? Her 67-foot boat, 4 tiny bedrooms, and that was a lot of fun. So welcome, Shannon.
Alec, thank you. I'm so delighted. It's not too often I find people who are so like-minded and care about the same people, want to be a hero to the same people, and have a different but related depth of experience. So for me, this is like a really cool play date.
I guess we can call it play dates. I like that. Yeah.
Can adults have play dates? I think so.
Yeah, that's awesome. This is definitely fun, right? This is in that area that gives me energy, and maybe it is my unique ability, just connecting with great people and learning and teaching. So the topic for today is Shannon's book, Multiplication by Subtraction, How to Let Go of a Wrong Fit Team Member. So Shannon, what inspired you to write the book?
Oh my gosh. I've learned that my creativity is not, sometimes it's inspired by, sometimes it's inspiration. A lot of times it's frustration. So I had gone to meet with a client. So one of the things that I do as part of the team programs, and I like to create new programs, is I created this thing called an onsite. This is where I or my team comes in to work with an entrepreneur and usually their leadership, depending on the size of the team. Sometimes it's the whole company, but usually it's leadership. And so I was meeting with my client. I won't say his name. Call him Fred. It's not Fred. I met with my client, Fred, and then he brought along his number one, his number 2 leader. And he's like, oh, this guy's the future of the company and the rest of it. And I had a meeting with this guy. I'll call him Aaron. Fred and Aaron. Aaron. And I was like, so when someone is listening to you and they're nodding, but they mean absolutely nothing of what they're saying. They're just like giving total lip service and didn't mean a word. So at the end of it, I mentioned to Fred, I'm like, Fred, he is not on the same page as you. He is not here for your reasons. He is here for his own. He goes, oh, no. And he reiterated he's going to be the succession plan and all things. And he's such a great leader. And I'm like, all right, dude, consider yourself warned. 2 years later, he calls me up and goes, Shannon, you were right. And I was like, told you, like, why didn't you listen to me back then? Because it was just so evident to me. But he was blinded to it. And it cost him money. It cost him clients, may have cost him reputation, and it meant he had a very different future than he thought he did because he'd invested so much in this person. And again, is the person themselves a bad person? No, but did it belong with my friend actually and my client? Absolutely not. Absolutely. It belonged in a completely different environment. So I was bummed. I was bummed for my friend. And then it happened again, and then it happened again. I'm like, enough already. And, we both talk to business owners and entrepreneurs and visionaries, and they're like, and they waffle on, should I let go of someone? And so I wrote this book to make it a lot easier and clearer and faster for them to make a decision. Because because the team knows. Usually the owner is like the last person to know. And the rest of the team is, what took you so long? In the meantime, there's like carnage lying all around, but we're like oblivious and hopeful and all.
Yep, absolutely.
Long story as to what inspired me, but it was out of sheer total frustration because I saw harm being done. And my clients and my clients' companies are precious, and they do not deserve to be wrecked by someone who's running a different agenda.
And I love your book. I've read it multiple times, and I think it's one of those reads that an entrepreneur needs to read every couple of years, because there are probably wrong fit team members along the way. And we were talking before we started recording that, companies, their culture changes, and as they grow and scale, and so someone that was initially hired as a cultural fit may not be a cultural fit in the future.
Yeah. And we have such a hard time letting go of those people, especially if they've been around for a while or a long time. Strategic. I joined 34 years ago. It's 1991. And there's tons of people in the company who've been there for 20 plus years. And when people are no longer a right fit, it's tough. First of all, you have to keep pace with yourself, and then you have to make sure that people are keeping pace. And then that requires incredible leadership, which again, sometimes is there, sometimes isn't. So it's a complex subject, but sometimes you just have to drill down and go, yeah, this person it's no longer working, and have the courage, the commitment and the courage to make the call.
There's a good book that came out a couple of years ago written by Reed Hastings, the founder of Netflix. And the book's called No Rules Rules. And it's a very interesting book about the culture of Netflix. In the beginning of the book, he describes a time where they lost some funding, some investments, and they had to cut their workforce substantially, I think by over a half. And after he cut the workforce by half, he was expecting morale to be down, productivity to be down, not hitting any of their KPIs, not improving their revenue, because he had to let them go. And the opposite happened. So his current team rallied around each other. They were more productive. Their culture strengthened, and their numbers were through the roof.
Wow. So I have to read this. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a good example for, anyone that's struggling. When you let that person go, I would say 9 times out of 10 that in the short, or I'd say intermediate term and long term, you're going to be better off.
Well, thank you for saying that. That's why this is called multiplication by subtraction, not addition by subtraction, multiplication. And the best, I guess, metaphor I have for it is it's like a hot air balloon, and you cut off the ballast, and all of a sudden there's a big jump. It's not incremental. It's like, bam. All of a sudden you're at a higher altitude. You're more productive. The morale changes. People are like, oh, because it's like you've removed an irritant. You've removed friction. You've removed drag. Quite often, you've removed hierarchy, which in an entrepreneurial company is just keep it to a minimum, is what I'm learning. I feel like I'm a really slow learner at parts of this stuff. But it's like, no, if people have to go up the chain and then down the chain and then back up and back down, that's just a waste of time. Just go across. Go talk to the person who is an expert and can answer your question. So the more, first of all, I think that's kind of leader that you want, and you need to really be alert to cutting out people who are there for status. That's the value. That's the problem. They're there for status and their own raising up of their own profile, and not for the better of the company. You have a problem.
Yep, absolutely. So Shannon, what is the first step for entrepreneurs and leaders to identify a wrong fit team member?
So first of all, you need to look at why. And this is where the model that I learned about through Kolbe, KOLBE.com, if anyone wants to know, it's called the 3 parts of the mind. And one of the first things to do is to assess, is this a cognitive issue? In other words, is the person not able to keep pace? And it's really interesting. You and I are both certified in numerous profiles. I've got quite a few under my belt at this point. But cognitive is not one of them. Like, I know lots of affective profiles. I know Kolbe is the one verifiable cognitive profile. But cognitive is a big deal. And tip is phenomenal for this. It's one of the things that impresses me most about it is you have a way of analyzing different dimensions of cognitive capability, and you can match it to what is required. And so, but I also know, and I used to take this totally for granted, that everyone was pretty much the same and pretty good.
Mhm.
Turns out that in one of our cases of where we let someone go, their personality was a match, their Colby, how they problem solved was a match. At that point, there's only one thing left that's not working. It was brain power, right?
Mhm.
And so you have to determine, and I've learned that most entrepreneurs and most entrepreneurial companies require a slightly higher level of mental horsepower. So you have to assess whether or not that's the issue, or is it a lack of training? But also, if you've given the person training and it hasn't stuck, that is a clue. It's not a lack on your part. It's a lack on their part. So you have to assess that. Then, do you have the person in a wrong fit role? So do you have someone who's on disc, very conscientious and cautious as your front desk receptionist with lots of people coming through the door? And if they're the director of first impressions, they may rather be in the back room, not in the front. So, is their personality a right fit for the role? And then finally, of course, do they have the right striving instincts for the role? I'm a 9 in quick start, 3295, if anyone wants my whole Colby MO. And I'm really, really well placed for certain things, sales, speaking, coaching, that sort of, when it involves an audience. Put me behind a spreadsheet, I look incompetent really fast. And not because I'm stupid, because I'm not, but it's because I time out and I'm squirrel and I'm often doing something else. So you really have to assess, is there a mismatch? Now, if you've done that and the person is still, if you move them around, because that's how we used to do things at Coach, we move people around, and we found some amazing right fits by accident before we actually had the profiles. Now we can we're so much smarter. One of your latest articles is brilliant on the impact of profiles, because resumes are kind of fictional. They're made up, and ChatGPT is doing a great job of them, as they are of screening them, which is also interesting. So what are you going to lean on? So you have to have some assessments so you can look at it objectively, not just subjectively. So you have to look at it that way. You have to really kind of match it. That's why, I subtitled the book, How to Gracefully Let Go of Wrong Fit Team Members. This is not about being a jerk. It's not about being a hatchet person. But the other core reason, and this goes back to why I wrote the book, is a mismatch of values. And that you cannot train out of someone or into someone. No amount of cognitive, affect, or cognitive is going to fix that. So testing for values and making sure that that person's still in alignment with you is absolutely essential. It cannot be fixed. I think it gets fixed in early adulthood.
Mhm.
After that, pretty much immutable. I'm sure there's a few case studies where that has proven not true, but for the most part, most of us don't want to change our core values. And so if it's not a core value fit, as you were talking about, just call it, just make the decision. Yeah. So first step is to assess, is it this kind of an issue or is it a values issue? And then you'll know how to take action.
Yeah, and core values is so important, right? And I hold my leaders to even a higher standard, and I want them to be an ambassador of our core values and our culture.
Yes.
And they have a higher standard. And so if they're not an ambassador, if they're not representing our core values well, then it's time for them to move on. And
That is so good, Alec. Yes. Okay. I'm going to write that down. Higher standard for leaders.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know sometimes we are hesitant to let go of wrong fit hires, and there's some fear around it. And one of the fears is like legal ramifications, right? So
Yeah.
what I recommend is that you gracefully, like you said, let them go. Be generous with their severance package or what have you, and they're gonna continue to have you in a good light, and they're not going to sue you or anything like that. So it's costing you a lot to keep them, and so get rid of them quick, but give them a good severance package. Well, maybe a little bit better than they deserve. Some people say it's 1 week of severance for 1 year of employment. So I recommend being generous in that. And the other thing I know is that it's here in the United States, I believe it's less than 1% of employees actually sue their employer for wrongful termination. So, and I also understand that, and you definitely check with an employment attorney that is specialized in your state or country. But I still believe that in the majority of the areas in the world, that letting someone go for a core value fit is still acceptable. So it's a good, you're not going to get sued for that, in other words, but check with an employment attorney before you do so.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had someone say after reading my book, he said, well, first of all, I went through the steps and my team advised me, they're like, Shannon, get legal advice. Tell people to get legal advice. I'm like, okay. So that's part of it. But when you realize the actual length of the conversation to let go of someone is 15 minutes. Like everything you're dreading is 15 minutes. Like, do your due diligence, have things ready, and be generous. I mean, there are two ways to fire: with cause, which means someone has actually had to have broken the law pretty much. Very difficult to prove. You have to give them warnings, all the things. Culture fit really doesn't fall into that bucket. So if you're not hiring without cause, which is kind of the official term, then be generous, right? Just say, hey, our future and your future are going in two different directions. You know, freeing you up to the marketplace is how entrepreneurs talk about to themselves. But then let them go, just saying it's not going to work out for you here, right? I want you to be happy and you to be successful, and that's not going to be here. So let's set you on your next path. And so many people, and you don't expect this, and this is strictly bonus territory, but they'll come back afterwards and go, thank you. You saw something I didn't. As the expression goes, people do not fire themselves. They'll stay stuck. They'll be toxic. They'll badmouth you. They'll infect other people, but they'll still stay. And for entrepreneurs, they're like, why don't they just go do something else? That's, for a non-entrepreneur mindset, that is not on the agenda. So yeah, if you realize people don't fire themselves and they just need a gentle slash clear and hopefully starting point to do that. Now, I'm in Canada. Everything is it at will? Is that what it's called in the US? Employers have so much more power, I can tell you. Now, trying to go someone in other countries like the UK makes Canadians look different. Anyway, so in terms of level of difficulty, US is easy, Canada medium, UK really hard. And I think that's true for other parts of Europe too. So know your deal, which means be careful who you hire. Talk to you, Alec. But I think that's kind of how it goes. Can I just touch on something? Because there's some fun reasons. I worked a lot with my clients in writing this book. It was so much fun. And here's why why we're reluctant. So I have a fun list. We dread confrontation. We hate that part. Tears. We really don't like tears. We think it's our fault and we haven't done enough. That is probably the biggest misconception. If you've given them adequate training, adequate resources, and they're still not picking up the baton, that's a clue. Loyalty. Raise your hand if you're loyal. We don't see the issue clearly. We're afraid of the legal ramifications that you said. We think we need the warm body, like we justify keeping them. Again, one of the main reasons. We fear the work will come back to us, especially if it's a senior team leader. Alec, you were talking about how busy your calendar is right now. You also have another seat you've just taken on. It does come back to you sometimes. We think team morale might take a hit, but per your example with Netflix, it's like, yeah, no, the team's actually just waiting. We can't pinpoint the problem because we're the last to know. Hiring is hard, and they still get great results, even though they're not a culture fit. So we justify it for all of those reasons, and it comes back to bite us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all those 10 of those obstacles, right? Those are all 10 of them.
That's all of them. I didn't even count. Yeah. I think there's at least 10. Yes.
And sometimes it's multiple, right? Maybe someone chooses 3 or 5, or I'd probably check all 9 or all 10 on those. So yeah. I love the quote that you have in the book from Dan Sullivan, and he says, the leaders that got you out of Egypt may not be the leaders to take you to the promised land. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Ooh, and that's a tough one. This is where the loyalty issue comes in. And Yeah, I think one of the things that's most challenging for business owners, for entrepreneurs, ambitious business owners is what I'm going to call entrepreneurs, is that the need to keep growing and recognize that you are keeping growing. You're educating yourself, you're training yourself, you're meeting with other people, you're getting inspired. Your leaders also need to be doing the same thing. And if they are in any way resistant to learning, or they're not growing in the direction that you need them to, you will outgrow them. It's interesting, and I'd be curious to get your experience, Alec. It's not too often that I see leaders outgrowing entrepreneurial companies. Occasionally, I think that can happen, but more often, you're growing faster. People get comfortable. They get good at what they're doing. They enjoy a certain level of reputation and influence. And so, yeah, if they're getting comfortable, are they going to help you grow to the next stage? Are they willing to, as we talk about when we talk about 10X, willing to go through periods of fear, uncertainty, and discomfort to get to a new level of normal? If you're an entrepreneur, you need to be working with people who are entrepreneurial, right? And so that means being willing to scare yourself and get out of your comfort zone. That's why I wrote this book.
Yeah.
But how to have an entrepreneurial attitude. Yeah. So I think it's just realizing that actually needs to be a standard. And you'll grow more if you have people who are pushing you. And that's kind of what makes it work, at least from a leadership standpoint. Actually, as I say that, no, the entire your future leaders might be the ones who are not in a leadership role now. But we need to be like alert to those people and giving them opportunities and making sure your leadership is giving them opportunities, because sometimes they don't. Right. And it's like, let's make sure everyone's growing. Babs Smith, co-founder of Coach, has a rule. It's ABG, always be growing, right? In every way. So yes, outgrowing people is a very real danger.
There are a couple types of employees that are maybe the hardest for us entrepreneurs to let go of our team. And, one would be legacy employees that have been with us a long time. Yeah. And the other would be family members. So, I'll share a story with a client that I had that had a family member that was in their leadership team on the sales seat. This is a second generation company, and he was at his wit's ends because this was his sister. Oh. And they were close. They were. He said to me, he's like, Alec, I got to sit across the table, especially at Thanksgiving. And we got to, I still got to see her as my sister and love her. We have to have a good relationship. But she is not doing well in her role. She's conflicted. She's got other interests and passions. I feel that she's just doing this to honor my dad.
Right.
And so we had her take our TIP assessment, which is a very good thing to do if you're thinking about letting someone go, or if you're thinking about promoting within, is to take inventory of that person. How are they cognitively? What's their mental acuity, and do they have what it takes? So we had a number of discussions about this because he was a friend. We were at lunch one day, and I asked him this question. I asked him, can your sister take your company to the next level? And for whatever reason, that was his biggest aha. And he's like, no, absolutely not. That's what I needed to hear. Yeah. And so that gave him the courage to have that conversation with his sister. Yeah. And it just ended beautifully. He's like, I want you to do the things that you're passionate about. Our dad is going to bless this, so don't worry about this. And I want to be able to grow my company, and I want the best person in that role. So it was a wonderful situation. So that's a good story of a family member in the role. So and then we have legacy employees as well.
Yeah, let me just touch on that story, because I think there's, first of all, fabulous coaching. And really great coaching means asking really good questions. And that's exactly what you did. And I think one of the things that people don't realize, especially in that kind of example, which I've heard so often, is family members are there out of obligation. They think they're needed. They're trying to fulfill some expectation that's probably not really genuinely who they are. And they're making do. And it's a current level of, it's probably past-based, to be perfectly honest, and they're in the present. But again, there's no future. And that's interesting. This actually came up in a conversation yesterday in another podcast I was doing, which was like, you need to make a future-based decision. Is like 5 years from now, do you want this to be true? And if the answer is a heck no, then you probably need to take action now. Because there's something about the future. Asking yourself about that means you look back to the present, you clear away some of the present clutter and some of the friction points. You're like, oh, no, I don't want to tolerate that in the future. Right. So great prompting and great coaching. So that family members, especially difficult, especially if they're clueless. One of my other favorite parts of the book, putting this together was so much fun because it certainly was a team effort. I actually have a chart, page 34 and 35 on symptoms and the resulting cost. Everything. So you can do a little diagnostic. This is the quick and dirty way. Are they clueless? Well, that's one of the symptoms. And sometimes legacy people or family members can be clueless. Another one is arrogance, aka God's gift to your company, which often, if we're going to talk about, legacy people, that can be another one. Entitlement attitude. Ooh, it rubs me the wrong way.
Crazy.
And it's interesting.
Crazy. Yeah.
Right. So I'm a leader with Strategic Coach, and I've been with the company since 1991. Other than Babs and Dan, I am the longest standing person around. But it's interesting. It'd be very easy. And I'm sure I'm human. My ego is healthy. Thank you very much. However, as far as I'm concerned, I'm as good as my last workshop, my last speech, my last leadership meeting, and my last podcast.
Yeah.
Right. And I am always striving to get better. And it's not that I scare myself, but I kind of do. Like, I don't feel entitled. I feel capable, which I'm very happy about, but I don't feel entitled to anything. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
People who aren't accountable. One that's easy to identify, but it's distracting is the drama queen or drama king.
Yes. That jumped off the page. Jumped off the page to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's only some of them, but any of these clues will tell you. And, any of these, if you have more than 3 or 4, again, a clue. I probably should have started with this, how you diagnose it. But it's interesting. It's in their first 90 days. They're in their probation period. Level of difficulty is a 1 out of 5. But if someone's been there for 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, level of difficulty goes up to a 4 or a 5, or in case of family members, a 6 out of 5. That's kind of how I see that playing out.
The other one that is jumped off the page to me is lack of integrity. And, this is important when you interview new hires to really make sure they have strong character. But when there's lack of integrity in a company, and if it starts just a little bit, if it seeps in, if you're like, okay, can I really trust what you're saying? Can I trust the numbers you're presenting? Why are you kind of spinning things?
Right.
Maybe small things here and there. Maybe it's, hey, I want to put this sale through in the previous month to help get a better commission. Things like that starts eroding trust. And especially with leaders, like if you can't trust your leaders to do the job or to trust their integrity, that is a cancer in your organization. And that's another sign, like you say right here, that's a sign to get rid of them.
It really is, because if there's a lack of trust and lack of teamwork, people start to go around that person. And it's interesting. Then you're paying someone who's being bypassed. That means people aren't going to them to work. So you're not getting full value in terms of productivity. It also leads to a lack of accountability, because if someone says, oh, I'm going to do this much, and they don't, or I'm going to give it to you by this deadline. Now, I struggle with deadlines. I'm pretty good at hitting them, but I have help for a lot of them. But it's like I work my rear end off to be trustworthy. And, I say what is true. I'm authentic. I'm not interested in being fake. What you see is what you get with Shannon, right? You're very much the same. And I want to work with other people who I can also count on. And so people are not forthright. It goes down to, trustworthiness and authenticity and all those things, especially if that's a core value for your company. Bam. Now, I have met some people who, if they have it as a core value, it's a complete sham because the owners don't have integrity.
Yeah.
Right. And then I think they attract other people who say what they think is wanting to be heard. and they end up with a kind of crappy company as a result.
Yeah, John Maxwell is quoted by saying, "You can teach what you know, but you replicate who you are."
Yes.
And so if you are the leader entrepreneur, you must be an example of your core values. We talked earlier, your leaders must be an ambassador of your core values. So, that's paramount in having a great team. Stephen Covey's book, The Speed of Trust, right? He talks about the cost of trust.
Yeah.
And I believe, it's been a while since I read the book, but I believe that he uses the airline industry as an example. And, the TSA doesn't trust anyone coming through, right? And so
I'm a trusted traveler. I have to go through a lot of hoops to become that.
Yeah. But what would that do to the cost of an airline ticket if, every flight could be trust that the people on the flight had the best interest and weren't going to blow up a plane or do something stupid on the plane or whatever, right? I mean, our costs for airline tickets could go down by half, maybe, right? So it costs an organization when there's no trust, but when there is phenomenal trust, it's a healthy organization, and that organization is more profitable.
I know you can't have more than 100%, but yes, that is so true. And it just think about, everyone's had their own experience of what it's like to work with someone you really trust. Alec, I trust you, right? It's like, what you can count on me for. I know what I can count on you for. And that works really, really well. And this is, even part of what we call unique ability teamwork at Strategic Coach. And so placing people in the right role makes them more trustworthy is another aspect of that. But I grew up with this as a core value for my family. I was raised with this as something with everyone that my parents interacted with. And so it's weird. I actually come into it, as it turns out, slightly naive, thinking that this is normal. For a lot of people, trust is not normal. And and when they get it, by the way, you can create a killer culture when you actually foster trust with a company. I mean, think about Gallup's study when they did, it wasn't Gallup, I'm sorry, it was Google, when they figured out the number one factor to the most productive, and I would say profitable teams, wasn't education, wasn't years of experience, wasn't any of those things. It was psychological safety. How safe did people feel bringing up new ideas, bringing up opposition, Patrick Lencioni's 5 levels, they didn't have a fear of conflict. They could bring up things in a healthy way that would allow them to kind of hash through stuff, trust one another, and then they could, make commitments and be accountable and get results. So it's so foundational, but we underappreciate it's a soft skill. No, it has hard results when it works. And when it doesn't, because things slow down, you start to play out. One of our core values is no defense budget.
Say more.
So no defense budget means you're always playing offense. You do not have to worry about covering your rear end, right? It's like, it's not an issue. You can play full out. You can take risks. You can do new things. You can be afraid. You can, be uncomfortable knowing that people will have your back. When you are in an environment or a team or a culture that does not have those things, all of a sudden, a ton of your mental and emotional energy is covering up your reputation, covering your rear end, making sure people, you don't come across the wrong way. And it's so disheartening to me. I've had a few conversations about this lately. It's like, no, I want you playing full out. I want your new ideas. I don't want you worrying about how this is going to be received. It's like, and that's political to me. I don't want to work in a political company. I am completely ill-suited for that. And I want to make sure I create safety for other people so they can be their best selves.
And in a political company, I remember Dan saying this, that, people don't want to take chances. They're going to just stay put so they can keep their job, because if they take chances and they're wrong, they're going to be beat down and so it has a real negative impact.
Yeah. Innovation and creativity die.
Yeah.
And then so does your competitive advantage.
So one thing in your book that you mentioned is another quote from Dan that I think is super super profound. And it says, if you don't take charge of your future, others will.
Mm-hmm.
And I really want the audience to really think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Are you letting other team members in your organization take charge of your future because you're not willing to let them go?
Mm-hmm. I call it hijacking, right? So that's why having this emphasis on core values and making sure there's integrity with those and alignment, that's the other word I use a lot, is, if people are not 100% aligned with you, they're going to start taking your people in your company and therefore your company in a very different direction. All of a sudden you're like, what just happened? It was interesting reading Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh, co-founder of Zappos. And his very first company, he had this insight when he walked in the front doors and went, I don't want to work here, right? His very first company didn't reflect who he was. It didn't reflect what he wanted. So he sold it for lots of money and then eventually became part of Zappos. So it's like that. We underappreciate just how impactful that is.
Mm-hmm.
Like your company can end up being something you had no intention of, but especially if you got hyper focused on some of the stuff you love and you're good at, it can be very easy to let go of your attention on the other people and just enforce, I'm not sure what the best word is, that alignment to who you are, who you want to be, who you're growing to be. That's who's going to help you get to those next levels.
And, your book is, it's a small book with so much information and so valuable, but at the back of the book, there's a scorecard.
Yes.
And it's a very quick assessment, and you can easily determine if you have the right fit leaders based on this scorecard.
Mm-hmm. Let's just talk through the categories. And by the way, there's 4 different levels of scoring. So, 1 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 8, 7 to 9, 10 to 12. I know 12 scoring is different, but it makes sense when you divide it by 4. So 12 is the highest level, 1 is not so much. And there's actually language to describe each of them, which is really fun. So, and I have to shout out to a colleague of mine, Christine Nishino. She says, Shannon, mindset scorecard would be really great in this book. And I dilly-dallied and I'm like, okay, you're right. So thanks to her, this is in the book. So number 1 is aligned, as we've been talking about, with values, goals, and leadership. Number 2 is motivated by contribution, not status. Let me just riff on this one for a second. Here's what I find, and I've had this in my own career as well. I had a colleague whom I adore, still a friend of mine, but he was focused on status and he was mad at me because I was not focused on status. I could kind of care less. And I was focused on contribution. I ended up with more status than he did. And so you can get status. It's a byproduct, though, of contribution. If someone's going for status, I'm sorry, go work for a large corporation.
Absolutely. And one thing I learned recently, I'm always growing in this area of hiring. I've never arrived. And even though I teach others how to hire well, and 2 things here. One is one of my mentors said the best time to fire a problem employee or poor performer is during the interview process, right? Don't even let them in the door, right? But something I learned recently in my own hiring is that if someone asks for a higher level title than what is given, and it's maybe because of an entitlement, maybe it's because they had that title at their corporate job, which that's often not a good situation either. So hire individuals that are from corporate America or corporate Canada. But I learned that recently that could be a potential red flag, right?
100%.
And because what it did in our organization, it changed the culture. I had someone else who was a peer who said, well, why can't I have that title, right?
Yeah.
And there was signs of are they going to be resourceful in an entrepreneurial company because they came from corporate America. So I really like that one, motivated by contribution versus status.
Yeah, and I have a whole rant on titles for entrepreneurial companies. Like people who want a C-suite title, I'm like, seriously, it's mean, the only C-suite title I've ever liked is the head of founder of Joe Box, or chief underpants officer. Yeah. That one I can get behind. Director of first impressions for receptionist, sign me up. I want unique ability titles. I don't want C-suite titles. All you're asking for is a lot of really crappy mail and email. Just saying. Anyway, but yeah, that's a status thing. That's not a contribution thing. Smart and accountable, self-aware and team focused. I could spend an hour talking about that one alone. Collaborative and open-minded. We've got a very collaborative culture at Strategic Coach, and people really need to uphold that one. Growth-oriented, grateful, and generous. They're coming from a heartfelt place, and they're not so scarcity-minded. They need to hang on to every little iota of anything. And then fully engaged and always learning. So pretty core things. It was fun putting this list together, and I think they're very true for entrepreneurial companies.
Absolutely.
I don't know if they fit in other companies. I'm not an expert in corporate anything, but I do know for entrepreneurial companies, this resonates.
Yeah, I would recommend that entrepreneurs have this scorecard, and they have it on their desk or on their whiteboard in their office, and they look at it constantly. Yeah, it's easy to fill out, but it's so thought provoking. At VisionSpark, we have what's called the FAST assessment, which is found on our website. So this is a way to evaluate if your team is going to take you to the next level. So the FAST stands for future proof. Are they thinking ahead or reacting too late? Action oriented. Are they moving quickly on what matters? Scalable. Can they manage growth without strain or burnout? Transformative. Are they creating progress or clinging to the status quo? And so the FAST assessment, it stands for future proof, action oriented, scalable, and transformative. But it's also it's a fast assessment to take. So it's in under 3 minutes, you'll get an idea if your team can get you to that next level.
Nice. It's interesting. Status and status quo. No action on that one.
Yes.
That's very aligned. I like that, Alec.
So I want to transition to us as entrepreneurs. Yeah. And why do we, let's go deep here. Why do we tolerate mediocrity?
Great question. I have like 18 thoughts are all jamming together in my head right now. Some of it, I think the biggest issue, I don't think when people know that they have mediocre around them, I don't think we tolerate it. However, identifying that something is mediocre, I think that's actually where the challenge is. Or somehow we justify it to ourselves, or the team or other leadership justifies it to us. That is the other. And then we listen and we're like, so it's really funny. I get really adamant, and I haven't decided if I like that aspect of myself or not. But I have an opinion. It's like, I'm all about standards, right? I want to work on a high performance team. I love the people I get to work with. If I look at Kathy Davis or Katrina or Papirno or, Rinky Baroa, it's like they are so good at what they do. I'm good at what I do, don't get me wrong, but I can be a great teammate with them. Have I been there longer than all of them? Yes. So what? I can't do their jobs, right? Like, I want to work on a high performance team where people are ambitious and they're growing, and we love doing quality work and creating value for our audiences. Like, sign me up yesterday. If someone's mediocre and I feel like they're pulling me back or dragging me down, I will stop working with them. I'll bypass them. I have gotten some people exited because I'm like, was a marketing person years ago, and I was like, I cannot work with this human. Completely not accountable, never was prepared, no follow through, awful. I'm like, they got to go. And sure enough, they're gone. So it's like, I won't tolerate when it's so, but it has to be kind of like in my face. I'm busy. I'm doing other things. Right. So I think when it's right in our face, we will take action, but identifying it, some of the people who aren't very good, it's a little bit, this is going to sound terrible, but like criminals, if they just put some of their ingenuity to a job, they do really, really well. But no, they would rather use all of that ingenuity and smarts to learn how to bypass the system instead of working it. And some people in your company are really good at that too. Well, actually, I hope they're not in your company, but if they are, please take notice. And so they're clever. Sometimes they're charismatic. They're hiding it. It's not immediately evident. So why do we tolerate it? I think because my first answer would be because we don't recognize it very quickly. And I think, but once it's right in our face, if we don't take action, then I start going all psychological on you. I'm like, oh, are you feeling mediocre? Then you're going to tolerate other people who are mediocre. And that's not a good place for an owner to be in. Because if you feel like you're operating at a high level, you will insist and have that standard. But if you're, for whatever reason, not operating on that level, then you just feel like you've got a kinship with that person. So it's another reason I hadn't thought of before now, but I've seen it. I've definitely seen it.
In our people plan workshop that we do with visionaries, one of the things we have them do is to rate on a scale of 1 to 5, everyone on their leadership team. And we also add their executive assistant in that. And then we ask them to rate it again if someone else was going to rate it. So, we'll use like Elon Musk, for example. If you've read his book, he's like a no nonsense in his business. So what would Elon Musk rate that leader? What would Steve Jobs rate, the late Steve Jobs, or the late Jack Welch, the CEO of the century for GE, and what would they rate those leaders? And their scores change, after they look at it. And so what I've learned with our talent impact profile assessment is when we have entrepreneurs take it, there is one of the dimensions that we have them profiled on is their level of sensitivity. And so we have found more often than not that entrepreneurs are more sensitive. So on a scale of 1 to 9, entrepreneurs are in that 1, 2, 3 space, where you may have individuals in the military or engineers, accountants that are more thick-skinned, right? So they're 7, 8, or 9. So we have found that sensitivity, that empathy is their superpower. They're really good at finding the needs of their clients and creating a solution. So we want them to be sensitive. We want them to be lower, more towards the sensitive side on that scale, because they can create new products, new services. They can see the value. They can improve customer experience. They're advocates for the customers. That's their superpower. But when we look at when it comes to hiring, right, that is their kryptonite. Because they're going to hire someone that they like. There's an old saying that a typical interview is a conversation between two liars, right? So, but they're going to hire someone they like, and maybe it's all like them. And so entrepreneurs should, number one, let other people be involved in the hiring process, use tools like other assessments like TIP and Colby, use structured interviews like we teach at VisionSpark here. So I think that is a reason why we as entrepreneurs, I'm putting myself in that bucket, tolerate wrong fit team members, because we are loyal to them. And you have that as a category in your book, Multiplication by Subtraction. So I do think we value loyalty. And this person's been with me the longest, or I love how they represent our core values. They're a cultural fit. They'll go to bat for me. But could they take your company to the next level? Can they take you from out of Egypt to the promised land?
There's another dimension, though. If they were involved in the hiring, they don't want to be wrong. Right? It's like, oh, I don't want to admit I just made a mistake. And it's interesting. I've been kicked out of hiring, just so you know. I'm allowed to come in for the last interview, even for my personal assistant, the one that supports me, my support partner, Katrina. I was the last person to interview her because I'm a really good salesperson. My interviews look like a sales pitch on how great Strategic Coach is. Right? At the end, you're like, oh, I'd love to work here. I'm like, great. Am I actually being like deadpan and doing all the things you're supposed to do? No, I'm horrid at it. But if I was, or when I was, I feel committed to the person. I feel committed to my decision. I don't want to have made a mistake. I will overinvest in training and all the things, because otherwise I feel like an idiot. Right? So I think there's the sensitivity, and there's not wanting to be wrong, which is a whole other dimension of that too. But that's interesting that entrepreneurs are where there's superpower on one side when it comes to the marketplace, but it can be really a big downfall when it comes to hiring. Does not surprise me in the least from my own experience. Yep.
So let's talk about, we've talked about a lot today on multiplication by subtraction. Can you think of a story where, and I can even use my own example, but can you think of an example of someone that, they let someone go on their team and they have a benefit now because they identified that wrong fit person and their company is now multiplied?
Oh, actually, there's a story that's in the book that was really interesting, and it came out as I was writing it. And I like to use I call them my 10X team leaders. I use them as my guinea pigs, right? So I was having the multiplication by subtraction conversation before I wrote the book. And this one gentleman, I'll call him Paul, he was like, oh, I've got this person, I'm not so sure. And so he thought about it. And then he actually went to talk to his entrepreneur about it. And the guys, so what happened was we had this conversation at the workshop. He said, okay, I'll do it in 90 days. So he then gets a call from a client as he's flying back. So this was in Toronto. He was flying back to his home. It was a 3-hour trip. I think he's flying back to Arizona. So 3-hour time zone, 5-hour flight almost. And he got a call from a client that was, or a person that was in, put it this way, the person servicing this person, they had a kind of like a mutual connection. And the mutual connection said, oh, this guy is not making you look very good to your client. Mm. And then the guy had a 4.5-hour, 5-hour flight to stress about it. Mm. So he went to his entrepreneur and said, oh, I think we should make this decision in 90 days. And the guy goes, how about next week? So anyway, they made the decision very, very quickly. And what happened was, yes, some of the work came back to them, but they did not know that their client relationship was at risk. Mm-hmm. He would have lost clients if he had kept this guy on. So this guy that got let go was saying one thing to the leader that I was coaching and to the entrepreneur, but doing something completely different, lack of integrity. And so and then they waited a few months, I think it was 4 months, and they hired this amazing woman who stepped in, did a much better job, took their company to the next level, freed him up. But so it actually prevented a disaster and then helped their company grow is what happened with that one. But it was really interesting because he told that story when he came back to the next workshop. He said, yeah, I was going to wait 90 days. And then I got this call from someone else who just said, this guy is taking you down. Mm-hmm. And I had the entire plane flight to stress about that. Yeah. So that's one of the most dramatic ones. Yeah. But just to reemphasize something you said earlier, it's, we worry that it's going to be a morale hit or it's going to be that. We had one person years ago we let go and we thought it'd be a big hit to the team. And one of the nicest, she's a mediator profile in the Colby. And she was like, oh my gosh, I am so happy she's gone. I said, what? I never expected to hear that. Yeah, she had a really bad attitude, resisted all change, no upgrades to technology, refused to do things faster, easier, better, bigger. And I'm so happy she's gone. I just about fell off my chair. I'd never heard this person talk like that before. She goes, oh yeah, the team is so much better. We're getting so much better results and we're all a lot happier that she's gone.
Yeah. And I think, for the people listening, like if you are starting to think that someone on your team is not a right fit, that you need to let them go, they're probably not a right fit. I mean, you can read Shannon's book, Multiplication by Subtraction is a great book. Necessary Endings is also another great book.
Can I say it?
Oh yeah.
That's the book that inspired, well, other than that situation, that book inspired Multiplication by Subtraction. Yeah. This book is Necessary Endings applied to entrepreneurial teams.
Yeah, so good.
Dr. Henry Cloud, brilliant book. Mm-hmm. He talks about in relationships. He talks about in income, jobs and stuff like that. And then I just took it and drilled deep on entrepreneurial teams. So yes, letting Necessary Endings is a brilliant book because it really talks about the mindset you have to be in to make that decision and stop tolerating mediocre.
And I have several examples of stories where entrepreneurial companies, those that run an EOS or another operating system, they hire someone from within, they promote someone within to be that integrator, that number two. Mm-hmm. and they're struggling with it. They reach out to us. We identify that they really should not be in that role based on our tools that we have. And then we help them hire an awesome leader that has their cultural fit, fits with them, is a good, strong performance, has the strategic thinking ability, and their company just takes off. And I've never had one client come back to us and say, we're less profitable because we've hired this number two, or our top line's less because we've hired number two. So it's always benefit. So,
well, it's interesting, Alec, on that point. It's like if you have this whiff of someone, by the time you figured it out, by the way, everyone else has known for months, if not longer. Just you are the last to know. Just know that to be fact. And I have never had anyone come back to me and say, oh my God, I let go of the wrong person, ever. Ever. It's always been
powerful.
How come I didn't do it sooner? So I think that's a really key point. But people just need to have the tools. They need to have the mindset. They need to have have the confidence. I wrote this book to give people confidence that they could make a decision, to give them permission. Mind you, I also got into a position where I didn't take action when I should have. So it happens to all of us. But this book is designed to give you the push and the confidence you need to make that, to know whether or not you're making the right decision, because that's number one, and then what to do to actually do it. And that's really a lot simpler than you think. But then the benefits are so amazing. Your team will be happier, more productive, more profitable. Your clients will be happier. They won't be at risk. It's like there's just not a downside. And as long as you're not a jerk to the person that you're letting go, which can happen. I got some people who are so mad they just want to be like mean. I'm like, no, stop. Be generous. That makes a huge difference. They're the right person in the wrong company or in the wrong role. So graciously exit them, and then you can all move ahead with your lives and do better and bigger things. So
we have a little bit of time left. I want to ask you a couple questions. So we've known each other because of Strategic Coach. And I think we met originally at the first US conference in 2017.
You did. I remember the people, actually. Yeah.
So let's talk about Strategic Coach. If you're not a part of Strategic Coach and you're an entrepreneur, it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. And so Shannon, what can people, why should they join Strategic Coach?
Oh my gosh, so many reasons. Well, if you're an ambitious entrepreneur, but you're feeling like bogged down with the stuff, the messes, you don't have the freedom that you thought you would. You're like, oh, what happened to that vision that I had? Strategic Coach is what we call the missing structure. So we're not an operating system like EOS or some of the other ones. However, we work with you. We work with your mindset. We free you up. And it's all based around your uniqueness. So you don't have to be somebody you're not. There's, as you know, I don't even like calling them CEOs, but it's like, every entrepreneur is very unique, and therefore the team that they need around them is very unique. And Strategic Coach helps you identify that. We help you simplify so that you can multiply. That means simplifying your time, your activities, your marketing. We call it your top 20 in your farm club, your largest check. We just help you clear away the clutter. Dan has always been so great. He said entrepreneurs have all the answers. Their thinking, though, is just so cluttered that they can't get to them. So we help you unclutter your mind. We're a mindset program. We're a thinking program. My colleague Kathy is coined a term with one of our coaches: change your thinking, change your life. And when you are able to think about your life, think about your freedoms, think about your business in new ways, incredible new opportunities come up. I mean, we've got some phenomenal testimonial stories. I got to go look at Molly Thompson's. She's just in the workshop yesterday. And just the freedom, and the entrepreneurs glow and they look younger and they've got great personal lives. They've stopped going from marriage to marriage and family to family. They just get all the things, and their income grows and their companies grow. It's ridiculous. And one thing to anchor it is we talk about 4 freedoms. So freedom of time to do the things you want to do, time to spend time with the people you really care about, all of that, including clients, by the way. Money. Who's a fan? Money. It's like people think that entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs just for the money. Like, no, entrepreneurs are in it for the freedom. It's just that freedom costs a lot of money. Dan says, which is very true. So freedom of money to buy the technology you want, to buy the who's you want, the unique ability team, to buy great vacations, to buy adventures, whatever you aspire to. Also philanthropy and how you want to give and share your income. Like, that's a cool reason to have money. And then relationships. Oh my gosh, when you get freed up from working with people you don't want to work with them anymore, it is life-changing, including your team. So team, vendors, clients, you name it. And then finally, freedom of purpose, to be who you are meant to be in the world, to be uncluttered from that, to just be able to strive. I'm just reading, listening to Doug Brackman's book, Driven. I feel so seen and so heard. Another word for driven is ambitious. And he's describing the structure that driven people need around them. And I'm like, he's describing a strategic coach. And the last one, kind of a bonus freedom, is health and well-being. And that's mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. And because that anchors everything else. If you don't have health, you don't have anything else. That becomes your one sole focus. So it's all the fundamental is health and well-being. And we actually talk about it a lot at Coach. We've had special little programs for it. Dan and Babs are all about rejuvenation and regeneration. And it's fun because you just see people who are ambitious for having a great life for as long as possible. So long answer, but just to give you a flavor of what Coach is about, it's great. It's one workshop day every 90 days with a group of other entrepreneurs, all different industries, not mix and match, but mixed. And it's incredibly exciting. I mean, my selling point to join the company was that I got to do the program. So I've been in the program for 34 years, and it is essential to my well-being and to my success.
Yeah, thank you, Shannon. It's my favorite thing I get to do every 90 days. Travel at Chicago or Toronto. You do have other locations in LA and London, which I've done LA, and I want to do London someday.
We have a new one opening up in Vancouver.
Oh, wow.
I know.
That's
The coach who lives out there, his name's Eric the Viking. And so we're back to Vancouver. Years ago we were, and now we're back to Vancouver, which is really exciting.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And if someone wants to buy your book or find out about Strategic Coach, what should they do?
Two things. One is strategiccoach.com is where to find out about Strategic Coach. Amazon. That's where I buy lots of stuff. So I would check that out. But if you go to yourteamsuccess.com, you can get the books, but there's also some downloads. So you can get the entrepreneurial attitude exercise, which is the part of the Team Success Handbook, positive focus, communication builder. There's some fun exercises. They're different than your FAST survey, which by the way is brilliant. And by the way, you're asking people tough questions when you do your workshops. People don't want to think about those things because then they have to do something about it. But anyway, there's a bunch of cool downloads that will facilitate your entrepreneurial and unique ability teamwork. So Your Team Success is another great resource. Or of course, also you can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah.
And that's great. And if anyone's listening has any questions, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to share my experience as strategic coach, as well as connect you with one of our client strategists that can help you with your unique people issues. So, Shannon, thanks so much for your time today. This was tons of fun and tons of value. So really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alec. And thank you because I know that you are one of my buddies, one of my friends in building great entrepreneurial teams and great entrepreneurial companies. And that just fills my heart that we have very similar passion, different paths on how we get there, but we're so like-minded. And for me, I just really appreciate the work that you do. I love our conversations, and I'm very grateful to be here. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks for listening to Right Fit Leader, brought to you by VisionSpark. Have questions or ready to hire your right fit leader? Email us at discover@vision-spark.com. Until next time, remember VisionSpark is your go-to partner for finding leaders and building teams.